The galaxy's greatest power, the Tridaxian Coalition, had maintained peace for millennia. Their vast empire, comprised of countless species, was a harmonious network bound by mutual respect, ethical science, and an unyielding reverence for life. For these beings, war was a forgotten concept, relegated to distant tales of uncivilized times, an evolutionary stepping stone. When they discovered Earth, the Coalition saw humanity as little more than an energetic, albeit quaint, anomaly. Humans, with their art and unstructured creativity, seemed harmless, a quirky species on the cusp of interstellar relevance. That assumption was their first mistake. The diplomatic delegation from Earth arrived aboard the Stellar Accord, a sleek Tridaxian flagship orbiting a star on the fringe of Coalition space. Humanity's representatives were a patchwork delegation: eager scientists, cautious politicians, and a few military personnel stationed as an afterthought. Among them was Gunnery Sergeant Brad Kincaid, a career Marine plucked from Earth's burgeoning space security division. While others adorned their finest formal wear or sleek diplomatic uniforms, Kincaid's attire reflected his function: utilitarian, devoid of flair, but meticulously maintained. His no-nonsense demeanor hinted at a lifetime of battle-hardened pragmatism, starkly contrasting the serene grace of the alien delegates. The Tridaxians themselves were a marvel to behold: tall, ethereal beings with silvery skin and multifaceted eyes that shimmered like opals. Their movement was fluid, almost as if their bodies danced with the rhythm of the air. Their leader, High Arbiter Elthera, addressed Earth's delegation with an air of benevolent superiority. Her melodic voice carried through the chamber, layered with a psychic undertone that translated her words seamlessly. "Greetings, children of Earth," Elthera intoned, her eyes scanning the room. "It is the Coalition's joy to welcome you into the galactic fold. Your culture is vibrant. Your resilience is admirable. We have observed much and judged you a peaceful species, though young and still finding your path." A slight pause lingered after her words, but the humans did their best to hide their confusion. Peaceful was not exactly a word most Earth historians would associate with their species. Kincaid, who had stood silent near the room's perimeter, shifted imperceptibly. His eyes flicked over the alien gathering, noting how they watched the humans not with suspicion, but with a serene curiosity, as if humans were akin to harmless woodland creatures. After the formalities, the humans were encouraged to mingle with their hosts. Diplomatic aides and scientists eagerly exchanged details of culture and science, their enthusiasm feeding off the aliens' courteous curiosity. Kincaid, on the other hand, kept to the edges, watching, listening, and resisting the urge to sigh at how easily his fellow humans seemed to embrace the rose-tinted illusion of perfection in this alien utopia. It wasn't long before a group of aliens drifted toward him, led by a curious scientist whose bio gown subtly pulsed with a gentle lavender glow. "You are the Earth Defense Forces," the scientist stated, tilting its shimmering head as if verifying a hypothesis. "Marine Corps," Kincaid replied curtly, arms crossed. His tone was polite enough, but it bore the clipped precision of someone accustomed to getting straight to the point. "Ah," the alien replied, its expression unreadable. "You are one of Earth's peacekeepers, yes? Remarkable how your species overcame your long history of conflict to evolve into beings of such harmony." Kincaid's brow furrowed, though his expression otherwise remained neutral. "Not sure I'd call us harmonious. We've got our share of scars. Scars often carry wisdom," another alien chimed in. "The Coalition, too, learned from its darker ages. What intrigues us is how Earth maintained peace after discovering the harm conflict can bring. Surely your people established universal frameworks to regulate such harm, did they not?" For a moment, Kincaid thought they were joking. When it became clear they were serious, his lips twitched into a faint, humorless smile. "You mean rules of engagement? Like what you're not allowed to do in war?" The aliens collectively perked up, their multifaceted eyes shimmering brighter. One of them leaned in, an excited tremor running through its otherwise fluid movements. "Yes, Such structures fascinate us. Please, tell us how humanity achieves such balance in regulating its disagreements. Kincaid suppressed the urge to laugh outright. He wasn't sure what he found funnier, the question itself, or how utterly ill-prepared they were for the answer. He shrugged casually, leaning back against the curved wall of the chamber. Well, it depends. There's this thing called the Geneva Conventions. It's supposed to set the rules for what's fair game in war. But, there's also a whole category of things you aren't supposed to do. War crimes, they're called. At the phrase war crimes, the aliens collectively froze. The room felt heavier, as if the ambient temperature had dropped. War crimes, the scientist finally asked, its voice tinged with something Kincaid could only interpret as horrified curiosity. Kincaid folded his arms, his smile widening slightly. Yeah, like using chemical weapons, targeting civilians, stuff like that. Generally frowned upon. Not everyone follows the rules, though. There was a ripple of what seemed like collective unease among the aliens. High Arbiter Elthra herself turned her opalescent gaze toward the Marine, her serene expression slightly faltering. You document and regulate such atrocities? She asked cautiously. Kincaid shrugged again. Someone's got to keep score, right? But if you think that means it doesn't happen, well, he trailed off, letting the implication hang in the air. The silence in the room was deafening. What had been light-hearted exchanges moments ago now felt like walking a tightrope over a chasm. The aliens looked at one another, their radiant forms dimming slightly as the implications of Kincaid's words sank in. Fascinating, the lavender alien muttered, its voice thin and unconvincing. It seemed on the verge of continuing its line of inquiry when a sharp trill reverberated through the chamber. A coalition aide rushed forward, their holographic communicator glowing urgently. High Arbiter, the aide said, its voice trembling slightly. News from the outer systems. A disturbance. The Silic Hive. The Arbiter's expression darkened, and the calm harmony of the room evaporated. Whispers of alarm filled the chamber. Kincaid straightened, his instincts sharpening at the sudden shift in tone. What's going on? He asked, his voice firm and authoritative. Elthra glanced at him, her multifaceted gaze filled with equal parts trepidation and reluctant consideration. A faction thought to be extinct may rise once more. Perhaps humanity's unique perspective may offer insight. The Marine raised an eyebrow but said nothing, the faint shadow of a smirk returning to his face. Things were about to get interesting. The Tridaxian delegation was unaccustomed to unease, yet unease had taken root. The Marine's words, flippant to human ears, had left the serene chamber charged with apprehension. High Arbiter Elthra, her usual grace tinged with rare apprehension, signaled for quiet among her people. Gunnery Sergeant Kincaid, she began, her voice measured and cautious. You speak of acts your kind regulates but cannot eliminate. If this war crime concept is a manifestation of humanity's capacity for restraint, then surely you can explain its necessity. Kincaid wasn't sure whether to laugh or groan. He met Elthra's unblinking gaze and sighed. Right, let's make something clear up front. You're not going to like what I'm about to say. But since you asked, he shifted his weight, folding his arms across his chest as if bracing himself. War crimes aren't rules of restraint. They're rules that tell you when you've crossed a line. So far, even the people committing atrocities have to pretend to be outraged. Things like deliberately targeting civilians or torturing prisoners. You don't do that theoretically. Theoretically? One of the alien scientists interjected, its multifaceted eyes narrowing. Yeah, Kincaid said with a shrug, his expression tightening. Humans aren't exactly perfect at sticking to the rulebook. In the heat of battle, sometimes the lines get blurred. And sometimes, he paused, as if weighing his next words. Well, sometimes it doesn't feel like there's a line at all. The tension in the chamber thickened. Elthra's gaze never wavered. You suggest humanity allows these atrocities to persist? I didn't say allow. I said it happens. Kincaid clarified, his voice clipped. There's a difference. Most of us don't walk around endorsing war crimes, but there's always someone, somewhere, desperate or ruthless enough to cross the line. He paced a few steps, searching for an analogy that wouldn't immediately alienate or horrify his audience. Look, it's like setting rules for a disaster. You hope everyone follows them, because chaos can make things worse. But disaster doesn't follow rules, and people aren't much different in a war zone. Disaster implies inevitability, said one alien diplomat, its opalescent skin dimming. Surely intelligent beings would not intentionally unleash such chaos. What possible purpose could these crimes serve? Kincaid smirked grimly, rubbing the back of his neck. You think humans have a monopoly on bad decisions under pressure? Look, when survival's on the line, morality starts to sound like a luxury. Starve a city during a siege, poison a well, bomb a supply depot, and yeah, maybe civilians get caught in the crossfire. He stopped pacing and turned to face the aliens directly. You do it because it works, but it leaves a hell of a stain. A ripple of unease spread through the aliens. Their immaculate vision of humanity was fraying at the edges. Elthera's voice finally broke the silence. And yet, your species survives, thrives, even. Her tone carried a trace of reproach, as though she couldn't reconcile the humanity he described with the industrious species they'd studied. Thrive's a strong word, Kincaid replied dryly. Let's just say we've learned to live with the consequences of our messes. One alien hesitantly raised a silvery limb. The Geneva Conventions you mentioned earlier, what purpose do they serve if the acts they prohibit persist? Kincaid chuckled humorlessly. The conventions aren't perfect, but they're not useless either. They give us a baseline, a common understanding of what's off limits, even between enemies. You ever heard of MAD, mutual assured destruction? At the blank stares, he sighed and pressed on. Back when humans were playing with nuclear weapons, we had this idea. You launch yours, we'll launch ours, and everybody loses. That fear of complete annihilation kept things in check, more or less. Same logic applies to war crimes. Punishment deters most people, even if some knuckleheads ignore it. Doesn't mean the system's flawless, but it's something. The room remained uncomfortably silent as the weight of his words settled. Kincaid glanced around at their shifting expressions. Their glowing auras had dimmed considerably, a stark visual indicator of their unease. These beings, so sure of their own harmony, were beginning to glimpse the chaotic, often ugly, realities of human nature. But before anyone could respond, a chime cut through the heavy atmosphere, drawing everyone's attention. The coalition aide who had interrupted earlier stepped forward, the urgency in their holographic device now visibly pronounced. High Arbiter, the aide began, their voice quavering. The situation with the Silic Hive escalates. Their forces have engaged the Varani's border outpost. Reports suggest advanced weaponry unseen for millennia. Elthera's expression hardened, a rare glimpse of unease cracking through her dignified facade. The chamber broke into murmurs, voices buzzing with disbelief and fear. Kincaid stood straighter. His instincts, honed by years of conflict, immediately recognized the signs of impending chaos. "What's the story with these Silics?" he asked, keeping his tone steady despite the obvious tension. "They are remnants," Elthera said, her voice quieter now, a relic of a time before the Coalition's peace. "They opposed unity, seeking conquest instead of harmony. We believed them defeated and scattered eons ago, their war minds broken." Her gaze swept across the room, lingering on Kincaid. "We may have been mistaken." The Marine nodded, absorbing the details. "So, let me guess. You want humanity's perspective." Elthera hesitated before answering. "Your insight is valuable. We now understand your people better than we did hours ago. Perhaps your history with conflict can aid in defusing this crisis before it spreads." Kincaid crossed his arms, weighing his words carefully. "I'll give you insight," he said finally. "This won't end with diplomacy or restraint. Not if your Silic friends are as bad as you say. Your move now sets the tone for what comes next. The Tridaxians exchanged uncertain glances. Kincaid leaned forward slightly, meeting Elthor's multifaceted gaze with one of steely resolve. "Peace is nice," he said, his voice low but firm. "But sometimes the only way you get it is by making damn sure the other guy regrets taking a swing at you in the first place." The Arbor's expression faltered for the briefest moment, and her gaze swept the chamber, reading her people's unease. When her attention returned to Kincaid, there was a new determination in her voice. "Prepare yourself, Gunnery Sergeant. If your words hold truth, the galaxy may have more to learn from humanity than it ever anticipated." The Varani's border outpost loomed in the distance, a vast structure of crystalline spires and glowing energy conduits. From the observation deck of the Coalition Stellar Accord, Gunnery Sergeant Kincaid watched the holographic display with a practiced calm. Bright red markers pulsed across the projection. Silic hive ships swarming like insects, their aggressive formations overwhelming the Coalition's feeble defenses. "Tell me you've got a plan," Kincaid said, breaking the tense silence in the command chamber. High Arbiter Elthora stood nearby, her composure fragile but intact. "Our protocols prioritize non-lethal methods. Disabling their vessels without unnecessary destruction won't work," Kincaid interrupted. His tone wasn't disrespectful, but it was firm, almost impatient. "Non-lethal's a nice theory, but the second you hesitate, you're dead. The Silic aren't here to negotiate. They're testing your weakness. You've got one chance to hit back hard enough they think twice about trying this again." Elthora hesitated, clearly torn between her ideals and the grim reality Kincaid was outlining. Around her, other Tridaxian officials exchanged worried glances, their glowing forms dimming in shared uncertainty. "Show me your weapon systems," Kincaid said, stepping toward the holographic display. "Everything you've got." An aide hesitated before activating the display, outlining the Coalition's arsenal. Kincaid frowned. The Tridaxians' weapons were undeniably advanced, highly precise energy arrays designed to disable rather than destroy. But they lacked the raw, unapologetic firepower Kincaid was accustomed to. "These are your primary defenses?" he asked, unable to keep the incredulity out of his voice. "They reflect our commitment to preserving life," Elthor replied, her tone defensive. Kincaid shook his head. "Life's great, but if you want to preserve it, you better be ready to protect it. You can't reason with a predator in the middle of an attack. You have to make them regret picking you as their prey." The Arbiter's expression faltered, but she nodded reluctantly. "What do you propose, Gunnery Sergeant?" Kincaid leaned over the display, his fingers dancing across the controls as he analyzed their fleet's capabilities. "You've got the tools, you just need to stop holding back. That fleet out there, it's a hive mind. Disrupt their coordination, and they'll fall apart like a house of cards. Hit their central command ship. Cut their legs out from under them. And how do you suggest we achieve that?" Elthora asked, her voice laced with doubt. A faint smirk tugged at Kincaid's lips. "You've got precision weapons. Let's make them count." Minutes later, Kincaid stood in the Coalition's war room, his presence a jarring contrast to the calm, calculated demeanor of the Tridaxian commanders. The Marine had assumed temporary control of the operation, his authoritative voice cutting through the tension. "Target their command ship," he ordered, pointing to the glowing red marker on the display. "Focus all firepower there. Forget about disabling it. You're going for a kill shot." The Tridaxian operators hesitated, their fingers hovering over control panels. Elthora's voice rang out, firm despite her visible unease. "Do as he says." The operators complied, and moments later, the Coalition's fleet shifted tactics. Bright beams of energy converged on the Silic command ship, their usual precision replaced by devastating intensity. The hive mind's reaction was immediate. Chaos rippled through the enemy fleet as their coordination faltered. "See that?" Kincaid said, gesturing to the scattered red markers on the display. "They're panicking. Now's your chance. Hit them while they're scrambling. The coalition ships moved with uncharacteristic aggression, firing relentlessly at the disoriented Silic vessels. One by one, the enemy's ships succumbed, their once formidable formations disintegrating under the assault. Despite the mounting success, Kincaid's expression remained grim. He knew victory wasn't guaranteed, not yet. "What's their fallback plan?" he asked, his voice cutting through the din. An aide scanned the data streams, their glowing hands trembling. "It appears they are regrouping near the Varani's energy core." Kincaid's brow furrowed. "The core? What's its significance?" "It powers the entire outpost," Elther explained. "A detonation would devastate the region." Kincaid didn't hesitate. "Then we can't let them near it. Send your fastest ships to intercept, and deploy ground forces to secure the core." The Arbiter hesitated. "Our forces aren't trained for direct confrontation." "They don't have to be," Kincaid said. "Send me—" Elthera blinked, her multifaceted eyes widening. "You alone?" Kincaid's smirk returned, sharper this time. "Trust me, I've handled worse." Kincaid's boots hit the ground with a thud, his armor gleaming under the outpost's artificial light. The air was heavy with tension, the distant hum of the energy core mingling with the faint echoes of approaching Silic forces. Armed with a Tridaxian pulse rifle and his own unshakable resolve, Kincaid moved quickly, securing defensive positions around the core. Coalition drones buzzed overhead, their sensors feeding data directly to his visor. The first wave of Silic drones descended, their insectoid frames shimmering with malevolent energy. Kincaid didn't flinch. He opened fire, each shot precise and deliberate. The Tridaxian rifle, though unfamiliar, proved devastating in his hands. "Come on," he muttered under his breath, his voice steady despite the chaos. "Let's see what you've got." The battle was brutal but brief. Kincaid's tactical instincts and relentless focus turned the tide, forcing the Silic forces to retreat. As the last drone fell, a tense silence settled over the outpost. Kincaid exhaled, his grip on the rifle loosening. The energy core was secure, the Silic threat neutralized, at least for now. Back aboard the Stellar Accord, Elthera addressed her people, her voice resolute. "Today, we faced an enemy who sought to exploit our values as weaknesses. Thanks to the courage and insight of our human ally, we have prevailed." Kincaid stood at the edge of the chamber, his arms crossed. He said nothing as the Tridaxians applauded, their auras glowing brighter with renewed confidence. Elthera approached him, her expression softer now. "You've taught us much, Gunnery Sergeant, about survival and about humanity." "Glad I could help," Kincaid replied. He glanced at the display, now clear of red markers. "But don't kid yourself, this isn't over. You've got bigger problems if you think this was a one-off." The Arbiter nodded. "Then perhaps we will need your guidance again." Kincaid smirked. "Just say the word." As the Tridaxians returned to their duties, Kincaid allowed himself a rare moment of satisfaction. For all their ideals, the Coalition had learned a hard truth. Peace required more than hope. It needed strength, determination, and, sometimes, a Marine who knew where to draw the line.